Hey guys, and I want to do something different. Well, I like flashing back on things, so it's going to be kind of like a flashback, but I want to kind of guess stuff from the past pertaining to Central Catholic High School and the science program. Now, freshman year, like I said, I had Mr. Jowett. He was the hardest teacher I ever had in all my schooling. Kindergarten through 8th grade, freshman through senior year of high school, Northern Essex Community College, Merrimack College, at which Northern Essex and Merrimack, I received both B grades in both of my science classes, biology and geology. And then UCLA for that 1 year for screenwriting. Even if I had the MFA in screenwriting, Jowett was the hardest teacher I ever had. Straight F, straight, and I never was an F student. Okay, I had a couple of D's here and there if I didn't do my work that well, or low C's, but I never had an F before until Jowett. So, what I recall about Jowett's class was as follows. He used to sit people based on average, so I was always the last guy in the class to be sat. And then this other girl, too, out of the girls. But we were the lowest. So we both went to summer school at the end for that. So for Jowett, his class was on the 3rd floor. It was in the front of the Hampshire Street building, looking out to Hampshire Street. And the cars going by. And I remember in his classroom, he had like a photo on a piece of paper of like the anatomy of the human body. And he had a blowgun. And at times he'd get the blowgun and go, and the pin would go right inside a certain part of the picture. Like, kind of like darts. So I thought that was kind of funny and entertaining. I mean, he was kind of militant, but at times he was funny. I remember he used to show videos on the TV. Like, we had VHS until like 2002 anyways, over the years. So he used to play VHS tapes of like scientific stuff. And we'd take notes on that. I remember we learned about the human body. We learned about plants, animal life. We learned about like photosynthesis, and I believe we learned about that kind of stuff. And then we have the labs. And the labs, I think my lab partner like took control of everything. Like, I just sat there. He did everything. He wouldn't let me do anything. I'll do it. He ended up with like B pluses, and I ended up with the Fs. I remember we had to dissect a frog one time. I remember that. And one time we had to like run up and down the staircases in the Hampshire Street building, and then we checked each other's pulses for like pulse and heartbeat and heart rate and all that. That's all and then one time he made us, all of us, it wasn't really like a project, it was just presenting to the class, like teaching the class. And I remember one time, I had to teach about alcohol. And I remember I talked about how cars use alcohol as fuel at times. Well, they can. And he's like, yes, they can. He was kind of happy I did that. You know, he's like, yeah, very good, very good. I still failed that quarter. I failed everything with Jowett, everything. That's all I really remember about Mr. Jowett's biology class. Then I went to summer school with, there were about 8 or 9 of us that failed. Well, not 8, say about 6 or 7 of us failed. And a couple of us in the class got D's, very low C's, and wanted to boost the grade up. So I was one of the ones that failed, but I got straight hundreds and everything. I had Mr. Molinaro. He was a summer school teacher that we had. And I got, everything was based on the notes, not the book. Jowett had everything through the book. You had to read the book to pass the tests. So Mr. Molinaro, we learned photosynthesis, we learned about the human body, and then he gave us all a project. He goes, everyone's going to have a project to do at the end of the summer semester. And I'm like, great, I'll do the biome project I did back in 8th grade. Easy A, easy 100. So I brought my F to a C plus, the highest I could. And then I had Mr. Benedetto in sophomore year for Intro to Scientific Methods. It was level 3. Great teacher. I wish I had him for biology freshman year. He was the best. Out of all my science teachers, he was the best. I remember none of the guys in the class, nobody would really do the reading. I remember he gave us he comes into class and he goes, okay, from the reading, biology is the study of, and I was like, life, good. Chemistry is a study of, and I'm like, chemicals, and everyone's just sitting there, and he goes, physics is a study of, and I'm like, forces, and nobody else said it but me, all that. They were just sitting there. Some of them were just mumbling like me, like imitating what I was saying. But he was like, good, good, good. So I was like, wow, I'm going to be like an A student. And then I did all my work, always participated in class, as did 2 other girls. And then we had a test, and I got a C on the test. But after all the participating, and we had, I think, a couple of projects that quarter, I ended up with a C. So then I don't know. And then he gave us a boat project for our midterm, and I graded myself. He goes, okay, you're going to do a portfolio. Grade yourself, what you want to get. I said, okay, A plus. I ended up with a C plus. For that. I was the first one done my boat and everything. He was impressed. Mark, great job, great. C plus for the second quarter and for midterms. And then I think that was midterms, yeah. And I asked around. I asked kids in the class that didn't even participate. What'd you get? Oh, I got an A plus. I'm like, you didn't do nothing. You just sit there. Because he was a football player, that's why. And a wrestler. I think that's why I get the A plus. So then as the year went on, we learned about I don't know, forces and stuff, physics mostly, and boats, the stern, the port, the starboard, the bow, all that kind of stuff. It was weird, and we learned about the scientific method at first. And I remember I got 100 on that. I think most likely got 100 on that. What the scientific method was when we first had a test on that. Then the second test I got a C. But then he gave me a C anyways. I'm like, oh my gosh. He was a hard grader. Greatest science teacher there, but a hard grader. But he was very passionate about the subject. And then I did academic Olympics, and he was like, oh, I'll help you out. What do you need? I'm like, nothing. I'm good. I'll do my biome project again. I did in 8th grade. I won 2nd place then. Sadly, Lucent Technologies, like I mentioned in other blogs, they gave Lawrence High School gold, silver, and bronze no matter what. Because simple questions like, how many licks to the center of a Tootsie Pop? Or which dish liquid makes the most bubbles will win against the 6 Major Land Biomes project, or HIV and AIDS, or a year-long ocean project. So, sophomore year I did the biomes, and I lost. I was one of 3 losers out of 6 projects. And then junior year I had Mr. Doyle for physics, level 3. Very hard at first. I had an F at the end of the first quarter. And he goes, you failed. I'm like, oh my God. He goes, nah. He goes, you know what Doyle means, Mark? I'm like, what? Doyle means tough. He goes, I'm going to give you a D. He goes, I'm sure you'll do better next quarter. And I did. I went from a D to a C. Then I got a C plus and another C plus. So like Benedetto, I couldn't get to that B level I wanted to get to. I didn't even care if it was a low B. I'm like, I want to get that B, and I couldn't get it. So that was Doyle. And we learned physics. We learned, I don't know, this stuff. Hertz. And different kind of things from physics. Green graph paper. I don't know. So many years ago. It was 1998 to 99. And then I did academic Olympics, HIV and AIDS, and I was one of 2 losers out of 5 projects. And the other project that lost with me, they didn't even have a report or something, so they got disqualified. So I was the sole loser who couldn't even get honorable mention or tie it with 3rd. So, and then everyone's like, where's Mark? And one day when I was at out one day, and he's like, academic Olympics. And he was all happy and smiling. So my teachers knew I put a lot of work into those things. But Lawrence High always won against me. And then in senior year, I had Benedetto again for marine biology. But this time, well, before I had him, I saw my guidance counselor to choose the courses for the fall when I was at the end of junior year. And she goes, what do you want to take as an elective or a class that you get graded in? I'm like, I want to take art. I want to take drama. But if I take like a psychology, sociology, I'm probably going to fail because at least ologies are always giving me like F's and D's. So she's like, all right, then what about a science? I'm like, well, the only science I'm interested in on the list is marine biology and anatomy and physiology. And she goes, Mark, you failed Jowett all freshman year. He's the only teacher for anatomy and physiology. You don't want to get an F again, do you? I'm like, no. And she goes, well, the only other class you can take that is science is marine biology with Mr. Benedetto. And I'm like, Benedetto's a great teacher, but I know in advance I'm going to get nothing higher than a C+. And she goes, well, take him. If you want to do science, just take him. So I did. And it was hard. Marine biology was hard. He was a great teacher, but his tests were hard. It was like Jowett's tests all over again. But his tests were hard in senior year. It was level 2. I started with an F. I believe it was an F. But then 3 of us would partner together. And I had all these posters made about currents. We were learning about the currents. And they're like, wow, Mark, you're going to get an A. I'm like, yeah, but I have like an F right now, I believe. He's going to give me like a C+ in this. He always does. But I believe I probably got a high grade on that because my grade was a D in the end of first quarter. And then I was like, please let it go higher. Please. Second quarter was an F. I'm like, oh no. And I told him, I'm like, I'm doing science academic Olympics. I've been working on this ocean wave project for a year. Okay, Mark, okay. So then I ended up with a C my third quarter, and then a C+ my fourth quarter. But then the final was on Mako fisheries. And we had a portfolio again like before, and we graded ourselves on it. And I said, this time, I'm not worth an A or an A+. Let's say B+. I said, just put B+. Because he graded me lower on 2 years before. 2 grades lower. So, okay. The lowest I'm going to get is like maybe a C+, C, not a D or an F. So, like I said, I did the academic Olympics again. I did the Ocean Wave project, a year-long project. Out of everyone, myself and the 3 people who won that came back from the year before, plus maybe another group that were new that year, we all had catchy projects. Everyone else had nothing. So I lost again. And then for the Mako fishery, I remember the last day of finals for me was Benedetto. And I came into the class lugging up my posters. I recreated. I was very creative my last semester, my last quarter. I took my losing academic Olympics wave creator that me and my dad and I made out of wood, and I brought it to my art class, and I painted it with waves around it and everything, and I called it the Wave Creator. And I got an A+ on it on my final. And I got an A for the final quarter by working on that all quarter, the final quarter, in Mr. Callahan's class. And then for Benedetto, I said, I'm going to take 4 of these trifold posters. I had like 6 of them. I'm going to put construction paper around all of them and just talk about Mako fisheries. Stand 2 up next to one another and 2 up against the, like 2 and 2. Like one on the bottom, one on the top, and then another one on the bottom, one on the top. Multicolored, green construction paper on one, red on another, yellow on another, blue on another, and then just do print out things like question, hypothesis, make him happy, because the students in Central, they never studied and did the scientific method. We just did facts. That was it. So, and that's something about Central. I think all the teachers brushed upon, maybe the first week of class, but then they never taught to that. I think Central would have been a lot better with the science program had the teachers gotten the kids to make trifold posters, like maybe one a quarter, on a topic in biology, chemistry, physics, whatever science class they had, life science, whatever. Question, hypothesis, like a science fair. Be creative with it. Present it to the class. We didn't do that. If we had done that, I wouldn't have gotten D's and F's. I would have gotten the lowest, maybe a C plus or a B. So Benedetto was kind of on the right track, though. He did assign some projects, but it wasn't like big projects. It was just like, just explain this in your project. You guys will do waves. You guys will do currents. You guys will do like in sophomore year, it was like how to graph, like results of graphs. Okay, pie charts or graphs or whatever. He was on the right track. All my other teachers never did that. Jowett never did that, or Doyle. It was all just notes, labs. Benedetto, at least he had some projects. The portfolio, too. But when I did my portfolio, I had posters. I said, I'm going to have 4 posters this time, not just a portfolio. I'm going to have everything. It's going to be like a science fair all over again. And I ended up with a B. So that's my experience with the science program in Central. I would have loved for it to be more with the scientific method. Maybe if it was, maybe it would have helped me out with those academic Olympics. Maybe I would have won. You never know, right?